Okay, so we are live with the Node.js release working group meeting on the 9th of March 2023. As per usual, we will work through our agenda issue, which is on the Node.js release repository. And it's okay, so we are live with the Node.js release working. Sorry, it started playing back at me. It is release issue 830 on the Node.js release repository on GitHub, and we will go through the agenda. But to start, are there any announcements anyone would like to make here?
Yes, so I did post in the Slack channel, but just in case anyone else hasn't seen, we've just, yesterday we've updated the website, the main Node.js website, to it now runs on Next.js. As part of that, the release post blog script that we use to generate the blog post releases, that has been updated. That now needs Node 18 because it's using native fetch instead of the Node fetch module. Or you can, I think you should be able to run Node 16 with the experimental fetch. But yeah, just be aware of that if you're doing releases. It did appear to work when I did trial runs, but as always, be on the lookout for any odd behavior.
Thanks, Richard. Any other announcements to make? I think we did have an LTS release this week, 18.15.0. Thanks, Juan, for your work on that one. So that one's shipped.
Yeah, and thank you for taking the time to sign it. I really appreciate it.
No worries. If that's all the announcements, we can run through the agenda. I've got the issue open, and the first item on it is confusion around some minor commits. I think we discussed this last time, and I believe I opened a PR to Node.js Node. So I'm not sure if there's anything else to do on this. Does anyone else have any recollection of what's to do here?
Yeah, I think we can close it once we decide that all the Semver minors would be considered notable by default, unless someone explicitly say, okay, that's not notable. So I think we are good.
Okay, sounds good. I'll link the PR that's now landed into there and say, hey, we've clarified this in our documentation, closing, but feel free to add any further feedback. And I think we can remove it from the agenda. And I'm going to skip past the schedules so I can go through all of those when I'm sharing my screen. The next item on the list is plans for NPM 9. That's shipped. I don't know if there's anything anyone would like to share or discuss on that today. I think there might be a desire to have a discussion going forward about how we align our schedules better. And I think for that to happen, we probably need to invite some of the NPM folks to maybe one of these calls to have that discussion. Okay, I can just add a comment to that effect. I'm not sure, it needs to remain on the agenda for next time. If that's our approach, we'll just have to wait for that discussion to happen. Fortunately, we have time. I guess they won't be updating again until October, November time. So. Also now going to skip down to the Node.js release keys issue, which says V18 and 19 assigned by a public key not captured in this key ring.
So I did see that when the PR landed for one's key, that the key ring was updated. So I guess we just need to make sure that everyone else's key is in the key ring. and then we can probably close that. Although I think I saw, did someone post something saying one's key wasn't self-signed? Or am I misremembering?
I did see that. It popped up on my notifications this morning.
But yeah, we did update the keyring was updated, at least for one's key. So I can't remember the versions being flagged in the issue that's on the agenda. Just maybe figure out who signed those and check that those keys were in the keyring. Because I think there's a script to run to add keys, and that does update the keyring. But if you just add the keys manually, you may easily miss the step of updating the keyring.
Okay, I can take a look and see if I can run through all the keys and check that they're in the keyring. I don't mind doing that, taking an action to try that out. I have to admit, the comment I just linked, I don't like when I ran that command, I didn't get the error about it not being self-signed. So I don't particularly follow what the difference is. So I might need to dig into that one. That being said, I think the default approach when we add our keys to that keyring, we do need to update. Like when we add our keys to that repo, we do need to keep the additional keyring file, right?
Yes. So I think there's a script in that repository to add new keys or update keys.
Yep.
Yeah,
and that
I think. Sorry, I think Ruan did that for the previous pull request, the one that you mentioned in the
Yes.
comments.
Yeah, so it's just a question of the other issue that's actually on the agenda. That was some historical releases, and I can't remember who signed those. So it's just a case of just checking that those keys are now in the keyring, and if not, there's some outstanding work, I guess, for us to look at.
I guess the stance is, say it was an old key that's not used anymore. It probably still be in the keyring. I guess, for people's verification to work, and that leads into the whole discussion around key signing and revoking keys and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can take an action to run through the keys and see what's in there and what's not, and report back. So before we go through the schedules, are there any other topics folks would like to raise on this call?
I have one related to my draft pull request I opened a while ago. Let me find it. Is to include the security prepare in the Git node in the core utils.
Right.
And one thing that was missing is do it in 2 steps. Basically, -- continue or something like that. And well, I took a look. I did an investigation, and well, we can do it, but it seems too much work for something that we will remove pretty soon once we have the Git node land for secret patches. So I don't. I mean, I didn't have time to keep going with it, but maybe we can land it the way that I mentioned in the pull request, and then once we have the Git node land private, we will just substitute, and the 2 steps will not be needed.
That seems fair. Is it easily testable as it is? Like, could I build up a mock proposal and it build up?
Yeah,
I think I did for the last round of security releases, and I think now from memory, it didn't update the main change log, or it didn't index one of the releases. So when you put the new thing in the blog post, there's an index that gets updated in a sort of table of contents on one of the files. And I can't remember which one it was, whether it was the main one or the top of the changelog for the version. But
Yeah,
it's quite
remember.
obvious that when you ran the test suite, there's a test now that says that it checks for consistency between the links, and it did flag that there was a table of content entry that was missing. So
Yeah.
that's probably something that was there before, because I don't think that was something you particularly changed. It might be a sort of bug that was already there in the changelog update scripts in Node core utils. But yeah, I just mentioned that because I did use it to seed the 14 and 16 proposals for the last security release and spotted that issue.
I did it for 19 as well. And as you said, I think there is a bug. I think it in the commit message is still missing, and the commit message is also missing the changes. It's just creating the regular commit message, if I remember correctly. So yeah, I will create some patches, but once we agree that we don't necessarily need the two-step with dash continue, I think it will be very easily to fix and test.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sounds good. I think in general it will be good for Node core utils if the different parts could be runnable independently, and then for convenience have like commands that do the whole lot. Just because things like regenerating the change logs is something that I sort of do quite a few times in a release, and I don't need all the rest of the. Yeah, there's a bit of the commands where they sort of go and look for commits to land. I don't necessarily need that once I've done the initial set, because I now have a list of commits that I'm trying to sort of curate, whereas I might want to regenerate the change logs because shards updated or stuff like that. So that's kind of an aside to this issue, but yeah, it's good to have sort of commands which run through and automate several steps, but it would also be good if we could just run single steps.
Yeah, considering the state.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good. We should open an issue and tag that if someone wants to pick it up.
You can assign me. I'm one of my plans for this week is this quarter is basically make the security release out the automation very easily. Like we just click a button and we break the word, and that's the idea.
Yeah, but it sounds like if I could just like type changelog only or whatever command and it just regenerates the changelog, I think that would help any release as well, not only security. It'd be great. So yeah. Idea, and let's create an issue and hopefully do it at some point.
Oh, and while I remember, I think it was Antoine. He's opened an issue on Node core utils to remove the bit that there's a bit in Node core utils that looks for deprecation tags and updates deprecation tag numbers. So there's a PR to remove that from Node core utils because the main branch and versions back to 16, there's now a test for the deprecation numbers, so it should be correct on landing, and shouldn't make its way. So especially if you're using the commit queue on the main branch, the commit queue obviously shouldn't be landing things that haven't had an assigned deprecation number. But it does mean that 14 would be exposed, but I'm kind of okay with 14 being exposed, given that it's more or less almost end of life. And I highly doubt they'll add a new deprecation to Node 14 now. But just for awareness, there is that proposal to drop that particular check from Node core utils.
Yeah, I agree. So is something missing on this pull request? I think we can just approve.
No,
right?
I think it was just for awareness that this check is going to be removed, and yeah, I think it'll be fine for all the releases other than 14. But I think for 14, we're not going to do much anyway. 14, but just to be aware of in case anything does come up.
All right. Oh, I think I forgot to mention here. I mentioned yesterday in the TSC call, but I'm planning to do the cutoff of Node.js 20 in the end of this month, like April 1st maximum. And if someone asks for it, or should I update any document about that, or?
I think our current documentation in the repo says we keep in sync with main until the week before the release. So we might need to adjust the policy on that.
Okay, let
just
me do that. I will include to my list here to do.
Yeah, I can't remember what we changed it to, because originally it did say cut a month before, didn't it?
Yeah.
And then we said about keeping it in sync, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't cut it earlier. It just means you'd be keeping them in sync for longer, I guess.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
dropped December major cutoff because it, like, at least I found over the years, it ended up being a let's have this thing, but every single thing that lands after that's major gets approved to go in anyway. So it didn't really have much impact. And in terms of simplifying the release process, it was just like, let's just keep in sync with main and mirror to main for as long as possible, and then branch off maybe a week before, or maybe we could change that to 2 weeks before, so we get a bit of a longer code freeze on what goes out. Yeah.
It makes me think that we need to review our build and toolchain requirements for V20.
Yes, so we are going to move compiling the GCC binaries to compile Node 20 of GCC 20. I did land a PR to the configure scripts, so the configure scripts were worn, but I need to go around the build servers and make sure GCC 10 is on there, and that the compiler selector script actually picks GCC 10 for Node 20 and later. I don't remember where we are. There was a PR or a issue talking about moving to C++. Was it 17 or 20? No, we're on 17, aren't we? Is it 20?
We are in 17, yeah. We
Yeah,
are.
But I think that was stuck.
not ready for 20.
Okay.
But maybe there are some platforms that we need to stop supporting.
I think the only remaining is the Windows one, right? Or
so I did see a comment from Zhao and Stefan saying they were going to look at the Windows platforms. We could maybe sort of try and make that a bit more formal, or sort of give them a sort of deadline to make that.
What I can do is maybe prepare an issue with a list of the different platforms, and
and I think
all of them.
Ulysses discussed maybe dropping macOS 10.15. So that might be something to look at. And then there was something else that I just thought of that I've now forgotten.
There's also FreeBSD potentially.
Sorry?
FreeBSD. I'm not sure
that's
where we are on that.
Is that not tier 3, or it's pretty low down? I remember there was an issue saying someone wanted it bumped up, but I think it was at the lowest tier. But yeah, I mean, we can look at that. Yeah, the one that I remember is, I think there was discussion about dropping Windows 32-bit stalled. I don't know where that got to. So there was an issue saying maybe we
yeah, we were waiting on someone from Microsoft to give us information on that.
So yeah, that might be another thing to chase up on. But yes, you're right. We do need to review the platform requirements, and anything that requires build changes in terms of stuff on the CI or things installed in the machines, we need to identify soonish so that we can get them up and running ahead of the release next month. Is there anything else on that topic?
I don't think so. Sorry, I was just replying. Cool. On the topic of new automation-y things, I don't think it ever made its way onto the agenda. So it didn't need to, but just mention the proposal for adding a notable change bot. Do we need to move that to like Node Core or CC Node.js collaborators to see what they think before it's worth trying to make a PR for it, or should we just go for it?
I'm most inclined to go for it. Wasn't there something else that came up that someone said? Well, I say someone, it's probably you, suggested we could also do a sort of tagging comment.
TSC.
Yeah, was that right? It was something else came up, and there was suggestion that we can almost do the same thing where once a label is applied, it generates a comment that people are supposed to fill in, and then automation could search for that and pull out the information.
Yeah, I suggested it thinking, if I'm doing this logic anyway, then we could consider that. I think it got some +1s, but
yeah. So I might must be inclined to if you whoever feels like doing it to PR that, and I must PR it as a sort of general. This is the mechanism, and here's a concrete example of how we would use it. And then, yeah.
TSC one first potentially, as the easier one, or the release one.
Yeah, whichever one is easier, I guess.
They should be the same, I guess. So
yeah,
I'll take like the mechanism's already there, because when we add fast track, it posts a comment saying, "Hey, someone's add fast track." So I'll just take a look and see what it will take.
Yeah, I think the only thing would be having enough things in the comment to be able to pick it up. Afterwards as a sort of
for the release notes.
Yeah,
like having some repeatable structure we could.
Yeah, some either an eye catcher or the comments of a particular type, or how will we identify the comments? Because I presume we don't necessarily want to walk through some of the issues have like hundreds of comments.
I was going to do a crude for the release notes one prototype. I was going to like put a crude like code block with Markdown and say add your content here, so that we know what content the bot posts, so we can then check that it's the bot issue with that content and pick it up.
Yeah, sounds reasonable.
The first attempt anyway. Okay, so I will switch gears and try and share for the schedules now. Let's quickly go through those. Right. Could someone confirm you're seeing the release 19 plan, just to make sure I'm sharing the correct window?
Yes, that's correct.
Great, perfect. So where are we? Around here?
Yeah. It was supposed to be this week, but as I mentioned in this issue, I couldn't make it. So I switched it with Michael, and I think he will do the 19.8 next week, and I will do 1 week after.
Okay, sounds good. And do we want to keep the one in early April? The reason I asked this is like the less we put in the last 19, the more ends up in the Node 20 changelog, which people like to read and generates interest. So
yeah.
What's the release date for Node 20?
Is it the third? Is it the third Tuesday of the month, or am I misremembering that?
I believe it is.
Remember.
Normally around the 20th, give or take, whatever the Tuesday near that date is.
18.
So it'd have 2 weeks of extra content, so we could keep this one, or we could drop it, either.
Well, probably I can do this release, but it will be a bit delayed. I'll be back from travel this day, so I don't think I will be able to prepare or land.
So I
can probably do it. Yeah, just put my name.
Thanks.
I'll do it.
Cool. And that will be hopefully our last 19, if there are no surprises. Cool. Sounds good. We're all scheduled. Node 18. So Juan put one out 8.15.0. We do have another one for March. Any thoughts there? Maybe bump it to early April.
I don't know, Juan, did you notice much stuff that didn't make 8.15, which possibly could go out in another release, or will we just give a bit more time for things to make a release?
I think a lot of it was waiting on the baking time in current, to be honest.
Fair enough.
So I don't know whether in 3 weeks' time it will have hopefully had enough or not. Depends when the 19 goes up. I think keep it, and until someone puts their name next to it, maybe they can adjust the dates to suit their availability. Um, 18. When does that go out of active? Actually, October, right?
Yeah, I think it's October. It's a year, isn't it? It's 12 months inactive.
Yeah. Okay. Just put placeholder in there to add some more. I might be able to do this one, but if I do this one, it will likely be the week later in April. I'll add my name if I find a time to do that.
I can also do that one, or 16. I saw there were openings at the end of March for both of those, so I can do either one.
Any particular preference for you?
Not really. Either one's
I can pop you down for 18 if you're happy for me to do so. I don't want to sign you up without.
Yeah, that's good.
16. Guess Richard, do you know what's sitting waiting on?
Yeah, it's an npm update, 8 something, 8 something, npm 8. So there's an npm 8 update that's got a PR open. I think it's landable. I believe it passed the tests. So someone or a couple of people have been asking, because it's one of those audit triggering things where scanners are picking up dependencies, and then this npm update should update some of those dependencies.
I can,
yeah,
I'm happy to like put a proposal together and
okay,
have it maybe as a draft, so that it's maybe like a trigger for people to say, hey, what about this thing that we really need in 16?
I think there may also be a backport open for 16 for some of the test runner stuff.
Okay.
I think it was open when I did the last 16 release, no, the last non-security 16 release, but it hadn't sort of been in current for long enough
Right.
to take it back into that 16 release at the time. So I mean, the test runners had a lot of changes going into it. So yeah, it'll be filtering what's eligible to come back and what isn't.
Yeah, as we're in maintenance, what kind of stance are we taking on that? Like,
so the thing is, we have already landed the test runner.
Right.
That landed in the last release before 16 went into maintenance. So it only just made it in. And the one thing that I'm not sure of is some of the test runner stuff seems to be related to some of the watching stuff. Like the sort of node daemon node mon equivalent, the file watching things. And it's a little bit hard to disentangle the two, I think. So I'm not really sure. But I think the test runner is experimental, and the question then is, are the changes scoped to the test runner, or are they bleeding out into any other bit of the release? But yeah, I mean, had it not already landed, I would probably have not landed any of the test runner stuff. But given that we had landed the test runner stuff, it almost seems that the fixes that were being mooted were kind of major enough that if you were going to use it,
I'm curious, like, is it bundled in with additional new features on the test runner as well? Like, is there any line between? We'll take bugs, but
so I can imagine, for example, someone might suggest porting the reporters, which I would class as a feature, but again, I don't know how disruptive it would be, or again, whether it would be completely localized.
Okay.
Yeah.
Taking the, as you suggested, taking the approach of looking at what's the risk to other parts of the code, and if that's low, let's just bring it in.
Because I find it a little bit hard to keep up with the test runner changes because there's a lot of activity going on on it, and even the pull request to mark it stable in Node 20, that's been sort of, there's been discussions about what has landed, what hasn't landed, what might land that might be Semver major in terms of the test runner. So there's lots of different aspects of the test runner, and I can't remember what has and hasn't landed in 16, and of the stuff that hasn't landed, without looking, I'm not sure how disruptive it would be.
Okay, I'll take it. So that's all we can do. We don't really want to leave it in a partial state where we then need to pull in more things in a couple of months' time or whatever to patch them up. But I think
it's just a balance. It's a balancing act to just try and work out, and if it's come down to maybe it's separate enough that nothing's going to break by not having it. Like the test runner doesn't necessarily need it to function. It's like you said, it's a feature rather than a fix. Then maybe we can make the call to say, not this, not at the moment.
Okay. I'll see what's open. I'll build up. I'll do like a draft proposal, put a TBD date in, and use it as like a working, and then maybe we make a call when there's enough or a pushing factor to ship.
Yeah, and we're likely to have more than just one more release for 16 because we've got until September. So if it doesn't make the next proposed release, there's always potentially one further down the line.
And then we have 14. We have a tentative last release before end of life. We'd like to do some like cleanup releases to leave it in a good state. But
I'm wondering whether to push that to the beginning of April, but not too far into April. I don't know. It depends if anyone wants to volunteer to do that. I probably won't have time this month, but maybe if it's April, I might, depending on how build is looking.
Do you know if there's similarly anything like an NPM update or something waiting?
There's definitely not an NPM update because we've just updated it in the last one. I honestly can't remember. I honestly don't know if there's anything actually pending.
I think I saw some minors opened that I was like, is it a bit early to go through and say chances are this won't land, let's close?
Yeah, I think there was at least one that was closed. Can't remember what it was about now. The only other thing I might do is again, maybe this goes back to Node 20 or even current. We might look at the root certificates and update those in Node, and then maybe backport those to 14 just before we end of life it. I'm halfway. I have like half a change to automate updating the root certificates. So if I had time, I could polish that off, or maybe we could just do the update manually. But yeah, I mean that's a potential, but that hasn't landed yet. So that's a potential for a Node 14 release. Yeah, I think it'll be better for us to plan one, and then if we don't have anything, cancel it rather than forget about it, I guess. But yeah, we are Node 14 is end of life at the end of April, so we probably aim for one release, and then hopefully not have to do another one.
With bad timing or something. Hopefully. Okay. I can take, while I'm looking at 16, I can take a quick check of what's open for 14 as well.
Okay. Interesting that skipped to 5, but yeah, that's not a problem. That might have been me, or I can't remember. If
I can update that after. No worries. Cool. So I think we're scheduled. So we've got a 19 planned for next week. Then we've got 16 planned towards the end of the month, and 14 I'm going to open fill in what's there, and then we can talk about the date when we see how much it's there. So all good. And Raphael's busy with the Node 20 release. So I think we're all set. Any other business today? No. I guess one thing to bear in mind, maybe we'll post it in Slack or something, is Roy has proposed a release session. So maybe we should start thinking of ideas of what we may want to discuss there, any particular topics or anything. I'll link the issue into the minutes. But other than that, thanks for joining everyone, and speak to you all soon.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.